In the last episode, we introduced you to Brandy Hall, a decorated firefighter, a devoted mom, a woman known for her grit, her generosity, and the way she always showed up, no matter what. And then, on the night before her husband's sentencing hearing, Brandy disappeared. Her truck was found submerged in a retention pond. Her firefighting gear was floating on the surface. Almost a year later, her backpack was found, over 30 miles away. Then, an old fire helmet of hers showed up miles in the other direction. But Brandy herself was gone. No body, no note, no answers. And while the search efforts ramped up fast, the leads dried up just as quickly. Attention faded, and soon the focus turned away from Brandy's whereabouts and toward the people closest to her. Because something about this disappearance didn't feel random. It felt personal. In part 2 of this case, we pick up where we left off and dig deeper into the theories that began to take shape. Was this a revenge plot tied to her husband's drug case? Was it a crime of passion fueled by jealousy and betrayal? Or could Brandy have left on her own? My name is Sarah Reed, and you're listening to Sequestered, Season 2, Case 2, The Disappearance of Brandy Hall, Part 2. By the summer of 2008, 2 of Brandy Hall's personal items had surfaced, miles apart and nearly 2 years after she had vanished. Her backpack was found in a canal 30 miles south of the retention pond where her truck had been pulled. And a year later, an old fire helmet of hers, one she hadn't used in years, washed up in the opposite direction, near Mathers Bridge. But Brandy herself was still missing, and investigators were no closer to the truth. As the days passed and the leads dried up, the investigation began to shift. The search teams quieted and the focus turned inward. Before long, detectives zeroed in on the 2 people closest to Brandy, her husband Jeff Hall and her former lover, Randall Richmond. But according to reporting from Florida Today columnist John A. Torres, this part of the investigation didn't go smoothly. In fact, it got off to a slow and deeply frustrating start. Jeff Hall, acting on the advice of his attorneys, refused to speak with police. He was still in the process of appealing his felony drug conviction, and his legal team worried that anything he said about Brandy's disappearance could be used against him, so he stayed quiet. And whether he was innocent or not, Jeff knew exactly how that looked. His wife was missing, he didn't have a strong alibi, and he wasn't cooperating. He told investigators he was home asleep the night Brandy disappeared. His kids were asleep too, but it didn't take much imagination to see how that story might fall apart. He could have left after they went to bed. He could have returned before they woke up. There was no one to verify his timeline. Later, Jeff would admit that nearly everyone around him assumed he had something to do with it, especially in those early days, and especially because he didn't help. From the outside, it looked bad. A missing wife, a husband with a criminal conviction, and who was refusing to talk. Randall Richmond wasn't much better. The day after Brandy vanished, Randall sat down with investigators and lied. He told police he hadn't heard from her in weeks. But phone records told a different story. In truth, Brandy and Randall had been in constant communication. At one point, they were speaking or texting more than 80 times a day. In the 24 hours leading up to her disappearance, they'd spoken at least 5 times. And there were 4 more text messages in the minutes after Brandy was last seen leaving the firehouse. 2 days later, Randall returned to the Palm Bay Police Department and changed his story. This time, he told officers that Brandy said she was, quote, going away, and that she had asked him not to tell anyone, which raises a critical question. Why would someone who was going away sink her truck and leave her children? I'm going to share a short excerpt from an article by John A. Torres and Jeff Gallup of Florida Today from September of 2021.
It is believed by many that Brandy met up with Richmond, though he had always denied that. Also, Richmond's then-wife, Anne Marie, was in the vicinity, working that night at Palm Bay Hospital, finishing her shift right around the time Brandy left the fire station. She and Brandy had engaged in a shouting match earlier that year at the Grant Seafood Festival. Richmond and his then-wife have denied any involvement.
As the investigation progressed, Brandy's family started asking a new question, one that didn't get much attention at first. Where was her gun? According to her family, Brandy never went anywhere without it. She carried it consistently and was trained to use it. They believed, strongly, that if someone had managed to hurt her, it had to be someone she trusted, because she would not have let a stranger get that close. Law enforcement continued working on the case and even pushed to get Brandy's story featured on America's Most Wanted, hoping the national spotlight might trigger new leads. And Jeff Hall's arrest kept lingering in the background. Investigators openly considered whether people tied to his grow operation might have had a motive to silence Brandy. Was it possible she knew too much? Or was someone worried about her testifying the next day? As we know, Jeff refused to talk on the advice of his attorney, and while it may have made legal sense, it didn't help his case out in the court of public opinion. Desperate to keep the case in the spotlight, Brandy's family initially offered a $1,000 reward for information. Her friends held garage sales to raise money, and over time, the reward grew to $10,000. But there were no arrests, no credible sightings, and hope was starting to slip. In the last episode, I mentioned the backpack that fisherman found in late June of 2007, almost a year after Brandy disappeared. Inside the bag, officers found her day planner, her wallet, some personal items, and a single change of clothes. But here's what made it even more puzzling. According to stories of the unsolved, metal weights had been inserted inside the bag, almost like someone wanted to make sure it sank. This threw investigators. The canal wasn't connected to the original pond, so there was no natural way the backpack could have drifted all the way to Vero Beach. Someone had obviously placed it there. And with that discovery, the theory that Brandy had left willingly, it started to unravel. There weren't enough clothes packed for a long departure, and Brandy's daily medication, which was something she took religiously to manage her migraines, was missing. Why would she disappear without that? Not long after Brandy vanished, the questions turned into theories, and the theories turned into whispers. Possibilities began to rise to the surface, each one carrying its own kind of darkness. The first, drug retaliation. Jeff's grow operation wasn't small. It was sophisticated, lucrative, and potentially dangerous. There were whispers of stolen product, missing money, and deals that had gone sideways. So, what if Brandy wasn't the intended target, just the easiest one to reach? Did someone go after her to send a message to Jeff? Some investigators explored the idea that she might have been killed to keep her quiet, especially if people believed she knew too much. But after interviewing Jeff and digging into those leads, the theory lost traction. Police ultimately said there was no evidence connecting Jeff or his case to Brandy's disappearance. The second, a love triangle. Brandy, Randall, Randall's wife. The affair wasn't exactly a secret. People knew. And there had already been tension, including a public argument between Brandy and Randall's wife at the Grant Seafood Festival just months earlier. Brandy and Randall were still talking regularly, dozens of calls and texts every day. And that kind of communication, paired with Randall's odd behavior, raised red flags. He lied to police, changed his story, and was reportedly seen near the retention pond around the time Brandy vanished. It made people wonder, could jealousy have spiraled into something more? Something planned? Or something impulsive? The third theory, that Brandy chose to disappear. Randall told police that Brandy said she was going away and asked him not to tell anyone. And in some circles, people wondered if that might be true. That maybe the weight of it all, her marriage, the legal stress, had finally tipped the scale. That she just packed a bag and walked away. But for the people who knew Brandy, that just simply didn't add up. She wouldn't leave her kids. She wouldn't abandon her parents or her firefighting career. And then there were the facts. Her gear was found in a pond. Her backpack, weighted with metal, was found floating in a canal 30 miles away. And there were only enough clothes inside for a single change. Not exactly a plan for starting over. Ultimately, police would rule out the idea that she left on her own. A fourth theory has also been floated: suicide. Some people speculated that Brandy may have taken her own life, overwhelmed by the pressure of everything she was facing. But her body was never found in or around the pond where her truck was discovered. And despite extensive searches across multiple counties, nothing has turned up to support that idea. And finally, the theory that's the hardest to shake: Randall Richmond, the man who was reportedly the last person to speak with her just before she vanished. Some believe Randall knows more than he's said. The timing, the sightings, the inconsistencies in his story, even investigators have hinted that he's holding something back. But to this day, he's never been charged, and he continues to deny any involvement. That retention pond, the one that sank her truck and floated her gear, wasn't unfamiliar to Brandy. It was close to the fire training academy, quiet, out of the way, and reportedly, it was a spot where she and Randall used to meet in secret. If that's true, if Brandy willingly drove to that pond on the night of August 17th, 2006, it means she passed her own street, past her own driveway, past the kids she had just prayed with over the phone. So, if Brandy drove to that pond that night, what was she expecting to find? And who was she expecting to meet? What do you think? In the years that followed, Brandy Hall's disappearance never stopped echoing through her family, her firehouse, and her community. Her story has been profiled by national media, reviewed by the FBI, and re-examined by local law enforcement again and again. But still, no one can explain what happened to her. In 2015, 9 years to the day after she vanished, Brandy's family filed a petition to have her officially declared dead. It was a painful step, a formality that offered no real closure, but it was necessary for her children, her estate, and the legal system that had failed to bring them answers. Here's a clip from Gail Pascal Brown of WESH News 2.
Yeah, we can tell you that this is a particular petition that they asked for to declare her officially dead. The judge did sign it. Now the case goes from a missing person case to a homicide. Now, Brandy Hall has been missing since August 17th of 2006 when her bloodstained truck was found at the bottom of a pond in Palm Bay. She was a volunteer firefighter at the Malabar fire station for about a year. She disappeared on the same day her husband, Jeff, a former Osceola County fire chief, was to be sentenced for growing marijuana. Now, he was in court today, along with Hall's daughter and father, as well as lead detectives on the case. The judge did sign the order granting a petition of death and a presumptive death certificate. Now, the date of Brandy Hall's death will be August 17, 2006, the same day she went missing.
At the time of her disappearance, Brandy's children were just 10 and 5 years old, Sweet Taylor and Clay. They went to bed one night with a mom who prayed with them and woke up the next morning without her. That same afternoon, their father, Jeff, was sentenced to 18 months in prison. This was a single day that would mark and change their lives forever. In October of 2009, Jeff Hall was paroled, and at that point, the children went to live with him in Orlando, Florida, where he still lives today. Meanwhile, Brandy's mother, Debbie, became the face of the fight for answers. She's kept the search alive. She's given interviews, organized vigils, and reminded anyone who would listen, her daughter didn't just vanish. She was loved, she was missed, and someone has to be held accountable. To this day, no one has been arrested, no one has been charged, and no one has come forward. Two of Brandy's belongings, her backpack and her helmet, have been found miles apart over the course of 2 years and in two completely different counties. But Brandy herself has never been found. Some say it was retaliation. Others believe it was about jealousy. And maybe Brandy left. But the people who knew her don't believe that for a second. She was planning to testify in court. She had her gear packed. She called home to pray with her kids. She told coworkers she'd see them in the morning. I don't think Brandy ran away. She didn't walk away from her family. She was still showing up for everyone until the moment she was gone. She was a mother, a daughter, a firefighter, and a fighter, and she deserves answers. Here's what we know. Brandy Hall went missing from the Malabar Volunteer Fire Department in Brevard County, Florida on August 17, 2006. She was 32 years old. She was last seen wearing an off-white long-sleeve shirt with the Malabar Fire Department logo over the left breast and the words Malabar Fire Department on the back, dark work pants, and mid-calf work boots. Brandy is between 5'6" and 5'8", and weighed between 125 to 140 pounds. She has blonde hair and blue eyes, and two visible scars, one over her right eyebrow and one on her abdomen. She has a tattoo of a fishing scene on her lower back, and a Tweety bird with a fire hydrant on her ankle. And her navel and tongue are pierced. If alive today, Brandy would be 52 years old. So please, if you know anything, no matter how small, it is not too late to come forward. Please contact the Palm Bay Police Department at 321-952-3539 or call Crimeline anonymously at 1-800-423-TIPS. If you would like to dig deeper into Brandy Hall's story, Florida Today journalist John A. Torres explores the case in Season 3 of his podcast, Murder on the Space Coast. His coverage brings a powerful local perspective. Subscribe to Sequestered on Apple Podcasts for early access to new episodes, completely ad-free, and exclusive bonus content you won't hear anywhere else. And don't forget to visit our website, sequesteredpod.com, for photos, updates, and coverage of every case on the podcast. Brandy's story doesn't end here, and neither does our search for answers.